Well, we are heading into our attorney retreat in 4 days. And one of the processes we're going to go through is goal setting.
Goal setting.
Personal, firm, but mainly personal goal setting.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be a good thing to talk about goal setting.
Okay.
Because I really do think that setting goals it differentiates people between what people are able to accomplish or not. That the thought that you should even do it, and then once you do it, actually taking the steps to accomplish it. I think it's important that we talk about it.
I think it's important. I think there's some distinctions there.
Okay, but this is going to be funny also.
Okay, I'm ready to have some fun.
Okay. So, and there's realistic goal setting, and then there's dumb goal setting, and then there's achievable goal setting,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay, well, everything in between. Well, over the weekend, I wrote a letter. Crash, sounds of crashing and chaos ensue about my goals, as I always do. I always write things out because I'm a writer-outer, because I like to see how my brain works. I like to see it on paper. So I wrote them out and sent them to the partners. I always do. I do it every year.
Okay.
You know, maybe, Mike, you've even seen my goals. I always send them out. I didn't send them to all the attorneys. I just thought, I'm going to send it out to the partners. And then after this, I have a meeting with my personal coach / counselor to talk about my goal setting. So it's on my mind, is all I'm saying.
Okay, so that's why. This is like fresh in your mind.
It's fresh in my
You've written
mind.
a letter. You're going to meet with the coach.
Yeah.
You're going to be commiserating.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk goals.
Okay. So I'll tell you some of what I did, my process, and then we can talk about, over the whatever we want to talk about. We'll talk about. So for me, I still make goals, even though I am going to be 65 in 3 more months. So,
okay.
But I made goals. Remember where am I going to be 10 years from here when I was 20, when I wrote that letter, or 18 or whatever?
I read the letter.
I've always been like that.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see, where am I? Where am I? I can remember when I used to play piano, Mike. And I was a very good piano player, except for, look at, see how big these hands are?
Yeah.
I could barely reach an octave. I used to have to roll everything. And so I had these visions, first of all, that I was going to be like this grand piano player. And then that was like, no, that's not going to happen. You have to roll everything. So then I thought, well, I could always be a pop, in a pop music, some kind of pop. But then I had no pop sense. I was trained classically. That's all I played, and that's all I could play. And so I had those goals or thoughts or dreams.
Yeah.
But being the realistic person I am, I just always said, yeah, probably not going to happen. So I need to have a different goal. I have to have different goals.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty realistic about my goal setting. However, I will go for the dreams-ish, as long as they're achievable. So that was like my younger goal setting. Now, as an older person, what I'm looking at is I only have so many years left. When you're young, you don't think about how many years you have left. You don't, unless you have, an illness, or you're in wartime, or you're in bad situation.
Yeah.
You probably know this.
Yes.
But for me, the entitled privileged person, I just never thought about, my time is limited here.
Yeah.
It feels like you have all this time.
Yes.
So now my goal setting is finite. Now my goal setting goes like this. Okay, I've probably lived about a third of my life, if I'm lucky. If I'm lucky by now, right?
Okay.
Probably lived about a third of my life. Okay, for the rest of the third of my life, there's going to be probably a percentage of that where I really probably can't do too much of anything.
Okay.
So what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And then on top of that, being in this profession, where you see that you're a family person, you're this and that, and in a split second, everything is over because of an unforeseen event.
Yeah.
A car crash, a building fails. Like, our entire job is based upon tragedy and disaster. So even coming into this, I always thought, well, tomorrow it could be all over. I've always felt pressured. I always feel pressure internally to want to get as much as I can out of life while I can, and to do as much as I can, and to make sure the people I love are taken care of as much as I can, so that, hey, if something happened to me tomorrow, I'm really not that worried. It's this feeling of gotta get it done now. I need to.
Yeah.
So it's all of this competing stuff. So my goal setting now, very different from when I was young. Now it's like, okay, I can't just say I want to have 3 or 4 trials a year. I don't, because they're so long now. My trials are so much longer. But I do want 2 trials a year. 2 trials sounds good to me. 3, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
But 2 trials for sure. 1 trial, not quite enough.
Yeah.
I would rather try more than 2 trials a year. Where it used to be, when I first started trying cases, I want to try 5, 6, or 7. I wanted a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what kind of cases do I want to handle? Well, I have to like my clients, right? We've already talked about
Yeah.
that. Who do I want to work with? Well, I got to like who I work with.
Yeah.
Which I've never said before out loud. Now I say it. It's I want to have fun, and I want to like whoever I'm working with.
Yeah.
I just want to. I want to be more selfish about what I'm doing.
Yeah. I think these are all important. I mean, when you're talking about like life is finite and that you only have so many days in this world, and depending on what your view is on life after death, like that focuses you. And what I'm hearing you say is that something's going on and you're getting focused, even more focused than before, and you're really trying to be very intentional about how you use your time. I think that's a really good thing. But one thing that I want to learn a little bit more about is you talked about dreams and then you talked about goals. What's the difference between dream setting and goal setting?
Sometimes they are one and the same.
Okay.
And other times they are just a little bit more realistic.
Okay.
Like, I cannot reach an octave with these little puny little hands I have. I cannot be a classical piano player.
Okay. Right.
I realized this at a very young age before I reached junior high. My hands are very small.
That's good. I think for me would be like, there was no way I was going to be a professional basketball player.
Well, this is a very common, right?
Right.
This is a very common issue where, especially in today's society where everyone says how good you are, or there's so many different leagues that the talent pool is, it seems like you're the best one in your league, but there's so many leagues that when you go and get in competition with other people, you realize, oh, I just came from my own little league, but there's a huge amount of leagues.
Do you ever find yourself when you're thinking about these things, like, I dream to be a classical pianist, that the idea of like getting to a particular like place in the future takes you away from like the process of what you're doing that's bringing you joy? Like, you're sitting there and you're playing the piano and you're feeling the music, and something's just happening inside of you that makes you then dream about something greater. So for me, it's like I'm playing basketball, and there's something about the process and the experience of having learned it and playing with others that made me, as a young man, dream of wanting to be a professional basketball player. But like now, when I'm playing, I realize that all I really thrived in was being in that moment and going through that process. Do you feel it like that?
You know what I feel like as an older person now, looking back at some of the things that I wonder, like, how much is it that you really want to do that because it's who you are, versus how much do you want to do it because either someone thinks you should do it or because you like the trappings of it,
Oh, that's
the
interesting.
Lifestyle of it.
Yeah.
Like, did I want to be a great piano player because I sounded good and it gave me just inner joy and peace, and I felt like I was like, this is it? Or did I want people clapping when I played? Now I can't tell you, how much of it was, well, I want people to think that I'm really good at it, and I want to be professional so that they clap and everybody's so proud of me, and I get A's all the time when I play in a competition, or I can fill a stadium, versus how much inner joy does it give you?
Well, when you wrote your little letter when you were young, you said you wanted to help the little person. That was a dream, that's what you wanted to be. You wanted to have success, financial success, professional success, but like all of it was in that letter driven towards wanting to help the little person. So that was the dream, and that's come true.
Well, but if you go back to being a young person, which I wanted to start on, how do you know the difference between, as you said, a dream and a goal?
Oh boy.
Right? Because you, and everyone says, what is a very common phrase of parenting? You can be whatever you want to be. what about a bunch of hooey?
No one ever told me that.
Well, but I hear people say that all the time.
Yeah,
go
they
and
do.
Google it and
Whatever
see
you
how many
want.
people have said that.
Yeah, that's true.
You can be whatever you want to be. I guarantee that's normally a person that has not suffered.
Yeah.
But still, like, how do you know it's a dream and how do you know it's not? And then even if it is a dream, maybe you don't know until you go and try to do it and then figure out, and if you're turned away from it, then you realize, well, maybe that was a dream, and the logical part of you, or not logical, but the scared or whatever that part of you says, this is gonna be too hard. I don't think I can achieve this dream. I think I'm gonna go this other way. I mean, Mike talked about that before. He wanted you wanted to go into, you're a poli-sci major, and you thought you'd go down this whole one path. I mean, that had been your focus, your dream or your goal, and you got in there and realized, no, this is not the way I'm going to go, and you went a completely different. So what is the difference, I mean, especially for a younger person, between having a dream and having a goal?
For me, I think that, like, I don't think as a young person I was able to easily differentiate between dreams and goals. And I think that's just unique to me.
No, I don't know. Mike, is that unique to Mo?
No, that was
I
the
don't think
same for me.
Oh, it was for you? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's...
And I didn't have goals. Like, going into college, I didn't really have a goal. It was like, you were supposed to pick what you were going to do. And that was when you were supposed to decide what you were doing as an adult. But you're correct that that was a quick switch. And it wasn't until I found, I started doing music that I realized what I really wanted to do. And I did that for many years after that. But I'm not doing that professionally anymore. So, that kind of stuff changes too.
Yeah.
Attainability. That's what I think, like, the concept of attainability. Like, what is attainable? Like, you're talking about, like, the difference between what Mike really sparked this in me, and he's talking about this, between goals and dreams. For me, I think it was, what is attainable in life? Like, what is possible in my life? And, like, that started to, like, create the boundaries for me of what I could do or what I couldn't do. So when you're in that kind of mindset, a lot of that's driven to the messaging you're receiving from people and the messaging you're receiving internally, and, like, the kind of support you have. And that starts to help you develop the difference between what's a goal and a dream. So, like, for me, one goal was to make it through the day. That was a goal, without having my stepdad do something terrible to me.
Yeah.
Like, that was just one, like, that was a goal. It was an attainable goal. I had a process set up on how to avoid him, how to not deal with him. I had, like
steps?
Yeah, schedule. Like, I would get up very early in the morning and leave the house to go to school. I would go play basketball at the YMCA. And I would come home very late. And I would go to bed because I wanted to go to bed early and wake up in the morning. Because I did not want to interact with him or come into his day-to-day sphere. That was a goal. My dream within that goal was to survive. So, yeah, I guess I could make the distinction between, like, dreams and goals, although the concepts were not being used in my mind. But, I mean, hate to be Debbie Downer here, but, like, I think the positive aspect of, like, understanding that distinction was that now I understand it to be totally different.
Well, I think that what you're saying is important because so much of our community in the world, that, just even if you take it to our community, lives either in poverty or in just, in a place where they can't see the possibility, that there are no role models or mentors other than bad people.
Yeah.
Or limited people. We have numbers of people here in the law firm who were the first people to graduate from college in their family.
Yeah.
And then how does that even happen? Because they didn't see that. It wasn't there. And that's what I'm really interested in, is because I wish that more people could have goals and meet them, or dreams that became goals and met them. And it often doesn't happen. But chicken head. we're going to talk
That's right.
about
Chicken head.
we're going to talk
That was
about
good.
we want to talk about
Chicken head.
the people that do achieve
Yeah.
because and a lot of it is through this goal setting.
Yes.
I believe it.
My personal goal setting this year is organization.
Yeah.
Like organizing my mind in a way that is structured in order for me to professionally progress.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to be a key one for me. That's like my personal goal.
So I have had a lot of goals in rising up to, through my career, and I thought I'd share a couple of them of how they interacted with the actual circumstance of my jobs.
Okay, sure.
And I'm going to start midway. I was, as you know, I was a defense lawyer for a long time, mainly when my kids were younger, and then I worked for insurance defense firms primarily. Anyway, my first plaintiff-only job, not counting my mother, was when Christina was born. I left my prior firm because they literally did not want me working there. They could not figure out what to do with with a person that was pregnant and then had a baby. Because I used to fly all over. This is before there was Zoom, so I took all the. I was a heavy litigator. I flew all around the country taking depositions. I was their top litigating associate, and they basically moved me upstairs. It was a two-floor office, and they moved me upstairs where there were like 3 offices and a library. And no other office was inhabited other than me. They put the person that took my place down in my old office, and I just didn't want to come back there at the time. And so I left and went to go work for Tom Chambers, who you've heard me talk about, and I really enjoyed that. And I also had to put all my goals and everything else on pause because I had children. Well, I had 1 and then 2 and then 3. And I was in a traditional marriage relationship with a very kind of traditional guy. I was. And so I agreed to subjugate me to raise children and be a part-time lawyer for years. Yes. And even before then, he was a basketball player, so he would go to Europe. And that's why my whole beginning of my career, I never was employed as an employee because I told him I could not work for you. I have to be on a contract basis because because I'm going to go where he goes, and half the year he's going to be in Europe playing basketball.
Okay, you just described to me significant.
Okay, but we're not going to talk about that weird stuff.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you can talk about the weird stuff later, but
It's not weird stuff. It's just that's pretty incredible.
I paused all my goals.
Okay, but that's
to
incredible.
accommodate another person.
Okay, not only accommodate another person, accommodate a job, accommodate colleagues, accommodate children.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And I don't regret it in the end because I did spend a lot of time with my children. However, I do not have a tradition. We should probably talk about this. I did not have a traditional entry into the practice of law. It was very contra. So anyway, I end up this plaintiff firm with Tom Chambers, who's the only guy. And I loved working for him. I loved the cases. I loved being on the right side. I did have to commute to Seattle, which I don't love as much. But everything else I loved. I just loved practicing law during those only 3 years I worked there, and I left him. And I've told you this story before.
Yes.
Because of his philosophy of not recognizing me for what I did in the cases. Did we talk about that in the podcast?
We didn't talk about it on the podcast, but I think we talked about it outside of the podcast where you did a lot of work on a case, and then at the end
I did almost all the work on the case.
And
and
you did
but he got the case. He got the client, and he had been suffered electric shock injury from a high voltage line by a bad concrete pumper truck. I found an expert who was the head of the Concrete Pumpers Association, who had never testified before, and he became our expert because he hated this company. And I put together the medical of what happened. I put the demand together. I put everything together. We went to mediation. Tom mediated it because he was a closer. He had the reputation and got the biggest result he'd had. And after that had happened, he proudly gave me a bonus check that was the same amount as everybody else in the law firm, including the handyman, it was either $2,000 or $3,000. And I said, I'm leaving. I said, you can't, this is not fair. This is not right. And he said, I've always been responsible for this firm and for maintaining it, and I don't want to change the way that I do this. If I change the way I do this, something bad will happen. And he offered me, he said, what do you want? What can I pay you? He just wanted to increase my salary to whatever would make me happy. And I said, I can't do it. I cannot. It's not the money. It's the measure of respect. I literally put this whole case together. And I left. That violated my goals. That violated my dream because I wanted to stay there. I could see myself working for him until I knew he was going to eventually then go up on the bench many years later, but I did not want to leave that job. But I had a principle. Maybe it was always a goal to always be treated fairly and to feel that I was being acknowledged. It's always been a thing of mine. Like, you treat me right, you acknowledge me, you're fair, I am totally happy. The minute that doesn't happen, I am not happy. Is that a goal? It's a principle. But it interfered, my principle kneecapped my goals, because my goal was really to just stay with him.
I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
I think that it's like what I tried when I talk to some younger people, I talk to them, I say, like, what is your internal moral commandment? People have their own internal moral commandments, the like lines they draw. And there is something in there, you called it unfair. It was more than unfair for you to get a paltry check for the effort you put in. What was it? Lack of respect. It was undignified, saying that you did not have the dignity for more money. You did not. It was because you've kind of convinced me of this, but money is a reflection of dignity, and
it's an acknowledgement of your personal value.
Yeah. No, I think that, like,
It still guides me to this day. It always has.
I think that's a big one.
And I don't know, sometimes when I've told other, psychologists or coaches something like this, they've looked at me like, oh, you're one of those. And I don't know what that is, if it's bad or not, but it's inescapable. And they sometimes I feel like, well, maybe that's self-serving, or maybe but I don't really care. It just is. It's always been my little hot button is fairness. I know it's, I'm in this job, and so when you hear about fairness, it can be a cliche, but it's so inherent in me.
But you also worked hard, Karen. It wasn't like you went in like expecting. You worked hard. You worked a lot of hours, and you came back and just said,
could I have
please
gotten over
it.
a personal insult? I could have. What I couldn't get over with, and this is where you come into the goals, was what was the future going to look like with me staying with Tom? The future was that he was going to be very happy.
Yeah.
And this was going to happen again and again and again. This is going to happen. This is going to be our pattern. He would take all the glory, and I would do all the work. And I'm not saying he didn't do work. He did work on a high level. He signed his name to the things that I wrote. And he had other cases. I'm just talking about, I was a super competent attorney by then. So he didn't need to supervise me and micromanage me. He could let me go, but he would always sign everything. It was fine, it was his firm. But ultimately, I was looking at what is that gonna look like in the future? And it is because of that look forward, not the look backward, but it was the look forward that said to me, no. And I didn't have anything in place when I quit. So I went back to my old law firm and said, look, I'll handle plaintiff cases and defense cases. And that's when they gave me the grossest case I've ever worked on. The guy in the Metro bus who hit a kid, dragged him around town for like hours before he was finally pulled over for being drunk. I was a defense lawyer.
Yeah.
So anyway, goals are interesting, and I've been setting them.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about your process as you have become older. Now you have more than half your life to live. I only have about a third. You have more than you're way younger than me. What advice would you give to someone you teach on how to set goals and how to still have dreams and how to achieve?
I think my number one piece of advice is that you have to know who you are. You have to know yourself, and you have to know what I call those internal moral commandments are within you that you're not willing to compromise, and you have to like start there. And then you have to ask yourself, who do I choose to bring into my life to help me achieve these things? A lot of it is associations. It's who you associate with. And you have to be cognizant about who you bring into your life and why. And it's not a matter of tactics or anything. It's a matter of like, you deserve to be treated well. You deserve to be happy.
Go back to 30-year Mo and tell me how you would have done that.
Like what, little Mo?
No, 30.
30 Mo? Okay, how I would have done that is that I started to remove people out of my life who would continuously be cynical, who would come to me and tell me that something was not possible, or that I was a victim of my past, and that I had to hold on to the grudges of the past. I just started to nix them out of my life in a
What do you mean about that, Les? What?
Like victim of my past, like.
They would say that you were a victim of your past?
Like they would speak to me, and by the way, none of these people were like bad people.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind, lovely people in my life. They were good people. But they viewed my experience in my past as though like it defined me, right?
Okay.
And so they would always be very supportive of it in more like definitive terms, as like, I'm so sorry this happened, and this, and it was nice, and then it was always trying to understand who I was through the prism of my past.
Oh.
And so like, but I was more than that. And then, so
by them, they would constantly be raising it.
always.
And bringing you back.
Bringing me back.
But they were trying to do good, but poorly.
Yeah.
And you tried to tell them to stop doing it?
I didn't know how to tell them to stop doing it, but what I realized is that I didn't have the power to tell people to stop doing it. I didn't have like the language to do it like graciously. So what I realized is that I'm creating an environment in my life that is of this quality by having relationships like this. So I started to very slowly, around that time in my life, is intentionally choose people in and intentionally choose people out.
So who came in?
Like Kathy's one of them. Like she will not let me feel sorry for myself. She is always talking about, oh yeah, well there's more. Oh yeah, well there's more. Oh yeah, we'll get up and do more. Oh yeah, you're not finished yet. Like that kind of mentality is the kind of mentality that helps me go into this place where I'm attaining things that are going to make me happy. I have friends now, like, who are very successful, very financially successful. And when I first met them, you know, they were like, you need to go and work in the private world. Like, what are you doing working for the government? Like, it's nice, you've helped a lot of people, but like, you are limiting your abilities. You know, one of them came to my, rarely, he's one of my only friends. He came and watched me give a closing. And he was so floored at like what I accomplished in that case. He was like, what are you doing working here? He's like, you need to get out of here. And he constantly would speak into me, into my life, telling me like, you have to make a lateral move. You just got to go. So it's like people who are like seeing you and celebrating your little victories. This is what I call it, celebrating your little victories. Like you share with them like a little thing happened and they're like happy for you. You know this, Karen. There are people that you can bring in your life who, when you start to like spread a little joy about things going good, they start to kind of what I call not dampen it, but they kind of like go, well, but.
So I sent you that little clip on Instagram from Oprah.
Yeah.
Do you remember what she said?
Not specifically. What did she say?
She said, well, it was a clip, and it said, she was talking about people that don't celebrate you.
Yes.
The difference between a person that doesn't celebrate you and the person that celebrates you because they want the best for you, and you know that they want the best for you because they want you to be the best that you can be. Something along those lines. Like, there is no, I've heard her talk about this in different ways. Like, if you have a friend that is jealous of you, that's probably not a very healthy friend.
No.
You want a person that is in your corner and on your side. And I'll tell you a true story. So my best friend in the whole wide world is Shelley.
Yes.
McGlay.
I've heard about her, never met her.
Many years ago, over 20, she
Yes.
was trying a case against a plaintiff lawyer who I knew. And at the time, I was still heavily involved in Trial Lawyers Association.
Yeah.
I wasn't the president, but it was when not long after I had been the president of the organization. Knew everybody in the organization, over 1,000 lawyers. I knew it. I was very, very social. And I said a couple things to her when she was trying the case, and she said to me, I don't care if you are, plaintiff lawyer president or plaintiff lawyer person, like, you better be on my side always. And
Wait, what do you mean be my side? Tell me what that means.
And I thought about it, and I said, you're 100% correct.
Yes.
I apologize. Do I secretly in my heart always hope that a plaintiff wins? I do, but not when Shelley's involved. If Shelley's involved, either I don't want to know about the case at all, or if I do know about the case, want to know about it, all I care about is how is Shelley doing. I want Shelley to do good. And she's the same way with me. Like, she never, well, she'll say like, oh, you're going to lose this case. And it's not because she thinks that I'm, she's not in my corner. She's like, I'm really worried about this. I'm really worried about this. But I don't prioritize anything over Shelley. I just want her to succeed.
I mean, you just said, okay, so there is like, what you're talking about is like your ride or dies. That's what you call them. Like, these are your ride or dies. Like, these are people who, when something great happens to me, I'm picking up the phone and saying, guess what happened to me? And I just want to talk to them. And I just want to hear their voice. And then they say to me, I'm so happy for you. And then they reflect back to me my goals and my dreams. Yeah. And they affirm and they go, that's it, and keep going. So I think that.
And you respect the person, right? You have to already, that's a given. You have to respect that person to begin with.
And so, like, I think that when you're talking about, in the beginning, you're talking about setting goals and dreams, you've now said, Mo, I wrote this letter and I sent it out to the partners and I've set my goals. Now the question is, who's in your life that you think is going to help you, support you, bring those goals and dreams to a reality? You know who they are. I think that you're in a place in your life where you see things very crystal clear, and whereas I am still trying to develop that clarity, but I have people that I can go to, but you're like in. So I think that because you have this clarity, you're going to be able to use your time so well, Karen, because you're now acknowledging that, like, what you're saying, like, you got another third of your life to live, but so you're going to be what I call squeezing out of every day what you need to get to those dreams, make those dreams become a reality. I mean, that's exciting. Aren't you excited? I think that's exciting.
Don't I look excited?
I mean, Mike, isn't that exciting?
Yes, it is.
I think that's exciting.
I don't take for granted of how long we're going to be here. I'm just saying that when you're planning, you're thinking, oh, I'm this old. Like, if I'm lucky, if I don't drop dead tomorrow, then I have this, you can only plan so much. But the fact that we live in this world where everybody's dying immediately, that doesn't mean that we don't plan still, right? You still plan for the future that may hopefully happen. But I'm going to tell you the number one thing that I see that people do wrong when they goal set.
What is the number one thing?
There's no steps.
Okay, process. Yes.
There's no steps. There's just like, I want to do this. I want to be this. And there's no steps to do it. I am very, very step-based. I like all my little steps. I know all my little steps.
Yes.
I've always been very goal-oriented since I was a little kid.
Process-oriented.
I'm just super, I always laugh about it, but my mother, Chinese, East, totally, I feel it in my gut, and, the stars are aligned, and I'm twirling my magic pendant, and things are going to all turn out great. And then my dad, German. Super, super, super organized. I am a combination. So I'm a combination of both of them in how I process it. So I have all these little steps, but I also believe everything's going to turn out just fine.
I mean, that's great, because like you have confidence in your process. You know that as long as you stick with the plan, everything's going to be just fine. And that probably frees you up mentally to make decisions and make them with confidence and just keep, and you have what's called a bias towards action. You just keep
Have you
making
ever
decisions.
made a goal and you wished you hadn't? You reached it, but then it wasn't a great goal?
No,
Never?
never,
What about you, Mike?
never.
You had a goal that you reached, but then you wished you hadn't?
Yeah, I think so. But my approach to goals is having big goals, but having lots of little goals that are the steps up to the big goal. And I always pivot if I feel like something's going wrong. Then you change that lofty goal and those steps to what you do think you can attain. And sometimes you hit the goal. I mean, that was the deal. When I went into school, like I said, I was thinking I was going to be in poli-sci and I was going to do something in government. And then I quickly, 6 months in, realized that wasn't going to happen. And it was very, very quickly after that I realized that I wanted to go into music, and I realized that I wanted to be a sound engineer, which not a lot of people look at that as something they want to do. And I achieved that goal, and when I was at where I wanted to be, I went, nah, it's not what I thought it was going to be, and I changed. Mm-hmm. And that's the way that I do it, and I've followed that ever since then. And I'm right up there with you as far as with my heart condition. It's even less than a third of my life left, and I made new goals for when I was older that are a lot different than what I thought they would be, and that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, you got to revise them periodically. I am more belligerent than you probably, Mike. I mean, one of my goals, right, was to get married and stay married. Well, my marriage did not stay married. However, it took us literally 5 years to end that marriage because, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go like this. And I'm going to just keep fighting and fighting and hope it all works out. I mean, I don't look like that outside, but mentally, I will grit my teeth and I will just sit there and hang on and just keep going. I will do that if I believe something is super important. I've done that in cases, I do that thing. And it's just, I've accepted the fact that that's who I am. I try to make sure that now that I'm older, that I make sure that I don't overdo that. There are some things that you have to get back and realize like you can't hold it all together just by your own personal grit, which I used to believe I could. I used to believe that through my personal grit, I could conquer all. There's still a little bit of that in there. I have to admit it. It's true. I mean, there's that. That's why there's a mental toughness to me. But there were some unrealistic parts, like that marriage. Like, I did more harm probably than good, at least to myself personally. by trying to stay in that marriage.
Yeah, and I would say for me, it was kind of the opposite of that, where I thought I was never going to get married, and this year it's our 30th anniversary.
Woohoo!
I mean, that's great.
That is amazing. Congratulations.
That's great.
And she, my wife, I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for her. She's helped me more than I can put into words most
So
of the time.
she's your ride or die, like Mo
Yeah.
said. She's your ride or die.
Yeah.
And I've got a few of those people, which
Yeah.
I'm all still with now, and
Yeah.
I feel the same way with what you said, where if something happens and they need people behind them, I'm on their side 100%. Doesn't matter who else is against them or what those other people are saying. I'm on their side.
Yep.
I mean, you also know that, I mean, you're saying at some point life comes to an end. So, like, I'll tell you what one of my goals is. One of my goals is to be with people who are going to help me on my way home. Because that's ultimately where I'm going to end up. And so I want people in my life to be with me as I go to that journey. Like, ultimately, it's coming to an end.
What does that mean?
That means, like, I want people to help me traverse life. Like, my goal is to be with people. I need to be in relationship.
Oh.
And, like, relationship is very important to me. And I think that if you're acknowledging that, hey, this is all going to come to an end, well, who do you want to be with as you walk to the end? Do you want to be with? Those are choices you make.
Yeah.
Every day you're making choices.
Oh my God,
with
you guys,
it.
this is like the heaviest episode we've ever done.
I don't think it's that heavy. I think it's great.
Chicken head.
Is it chicken head episode?
I think it's pretty heavy.
Is it heavy?
It's so
Well,
heavy.
okay, let's flip it. I mean, right now, guys, we are thriving. We are thriving right now in our lives, right? Right? This is a positive thing. But having an understanding that one day life comes to an end, great. But like, you just wrote a letter, and you have probably word saladed a bunch of stuff. And
It was 3 pages. Let me just say this. I can't do anything shorthand. If you're
Okay.
going to get a letter from me, it's going to be 3 pages long, single space typed.
So I think this is exciting. I can't wait to see, Karen, what the next step is for you, the next process is for you, and let's celebrate it.
Well,
Yes.
the whole purpose of this was that talking about goals
And
and
there you
goal
go.
setting and dreams, and
And we did.
we kind of did. It's a never ending journey.
It's always changing.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
Over and out.
Over and out.